एकम अक्षरम हृदि निरंतरम भाति स्वयं लिख्यते कथम। हृदय कुहर मध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् यहम् अहम् इति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति। हृदि विषमनसा त्वं चिन्वता मज्जता पवनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवत्वम्। देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तभावशुप्तिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावतः कोऽहं भावयुतः कुतो रतिः दृष्टात्मनिष्ठात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं। Namo Ramana. In this, the Thursday Satsang from Ramana Maharshi Center for Learning, it has been our practice to read 2 verses from the work Guruvachaka Kove by Muruganar Swamigal. Each verse reading will be followed by a short meditation on its meaning, and that shall be followed by a practice session of self-inquiry for 10 minutes. After these 2 segments of verse reading, meditation on meaning, and practice of self-inquiry are completed, there will be summing up remarks by Shri Venkatesh Deshpande ji, and that shall be followed by the offering of Sri Ramanashtotram. The chanting shall be by Vaibhavji and Pratnama, and the floral offering and Harati shall be by Manjunath ji from right here. We begin this evening's satsang as an offering to the Supreme by taking the first verse selected for us, verse number 546. We find verse number 546 in the segment Meditation on the Truth. The book itself, after the prefatory verses, is divided into investigation, meditation, and experience. 546 we find in meditation on the truth. The subsegment is knowledge and ignorance. Knowledge and ignorance, 546. Some declare, know yourself. Does anyone exist who does not know himself? Even knowing oneself is ignorance, as is not knowing oneself. Isn't this so? Tell me. Some declare, know yourself. Does anyone exist who does not know himself? Even knowing oneself is ignorance, as is not knowing oneself. Isn't this so? Tell me. There is a quote from Ulladu Narpadu, verse number 33. Bhagavan. To say I do not know myself or I have known myself is an occasion for ridicule. To say I do not know myself or to say I have known myself is an occasion for ridicule. Why so? Are there two selves, with one making the other its object, when it is the experience of everyone that they are one? So the feeling of the author says, the Guru Vachaka Kovai reflects the teachings in that verse of Ulladu Narpadu. Ennai ariyen naan, ennai arindhen naan, ennal nagaipukku idanagum, ennai தனை விடயமாக்க இரு தானுண்டோ ஒன்றாய் அனைவர் அனுபூதி உண்மையால். So the verse is about knowing oneself. Some declare know yourself. So the know yourself teaching is supposed to be very ancient and is supposed to be at the root of all spirituality. As Bhagavan says, without knowing yourself, to say that you know the world or you know God is really ridiculous. The first step should be that before we spend energy in knowing the world and knowing God, it makes logical sense, it makes all sense to know oneself. If who oneself is itself not clear and is a perception that is limited and subject to change, the instrument with which we are going to perceive itself is faulty. How are we going to know the truth of the object, be it the world or be it a God who is temporarily taken to be objective? How can we know when we do not know ourselves? What kind of instrument, what kind of purity is the instrument having with which we are going to measure the world or measure God? That's why Bhagavan says, knowing yourself is at the root of spirituality. This is said in ancient Greece also. Know thyself is one of the popular statements there. Now, some declare, know yourself. Does anyone exist? But the statement itself is taken for enquiry now. Is there any necessity to tell this? Of course, the practice is to tell and wipe it off. So this shloka is doing the second work, that you express what is to be done then remove the doing or the doer behind the doing. So now the enquiry will be why Bhagavan is saying, why the spiritual teachers are saying, know yourself. Is it not such a funny thing that who is there who does not know himself? So the first thing indirectly the verse is saying is, when somebody sets out an enquiry in a satsang, in a dialogue, trying to know something other than himself, it makes a lot of sense to inquire for whom is this question, to turn the enquiry on oneself. Despite them knowing their existence by themselves, they go into inquiry of other things which are known by a consciousness other than that object. Let me make it clear. The root question, do you exist or not? The reply to that is given without the support of any supporting evidence. Do I exist or not? I don't need the support of another, including the support of my instruments, including that of the mind. Even without the mind, I am. When I can be free of one thought, then I can be free of all thoughts. So I exist independent of any validation by thought. That is why Bhagavan would say, when somebody mentions Descartes, Descartes says that I think, therefore I am, which the particular person would have interpreted to mean that the thinking process indicates the existence of the consciousness, but it may not be like that in that teaching. But to that Bhagavan would respond, thought is not required to validate your existence. That is like saying the elephant's shadow is required to validate the existence of the elephant. It is self-evident. So who is it that does not know himself? Everyone knows themselves, but Bhagavan would qualify that by saying, however, they do not know themselves as they are, as they truly are. Some kind of veiling, some kind of covering up of the truth of the self makes the jiva identify with the body, and that very identification makes it project or makes it see the world of similar people, similar bodies. Bhagavan would say, if you have a physical body, if you are identified with the physical body, then the objects seen are physical. If you are identified with the mental body, the objects seen are mental. So like that, the who is it that does not know himself? They know, we know, but we do not know as we should know, or as we truly are. Even knowing oneself is ignorance. Now, this is a statement which we can inquire and validate as to why we should let go of thought. Like in modern psychology, the self-knowledge, the relative self-knowledge has started gaining importance. They are slowly shifting from the character of the person, the contents of the consciousness, to the personality itself. So now the focus of psychology has turned towards the personality itself, and there is a lot of research going on as to whether the self really exists. There is research that is going on inquiring whether this self should be less selfish. Now the human beings are so selfish that the human beings are destroying many things. This is the line of argument. Therefore, there should be a change in the ego, in the self. What Bhagavan says here is that knowledge is also ignorance. To know that I am like this. Therefore, by going from here to there, I am going to be a better person. He is still ignorant of what we truly are. What we truly are can be known only by dismantling that ego itself, not by knowing what the contents of that ego are. I am a less environmentally aware person. From there, know a little bit and say that now I am more environmentally aware. Now, that is still ignorance because at the root, still we don't know who we truly are, what the ego really is. There is only a relative change. There is not the reflection or the finding of the absolute truth. Even knowing oneself is ignorance, as is not knowing oneself. Not knowing oneself, of course, is ignorance. We have discussed that earlier, that for some, the expressing that I do not know myself itself is made as a statement. When it is made as a statement to defend oneself or to present oneself, like I am not a realized person or I do not know myself, that is still in the area of ignorance. It is not in the area of knowledge. That is why Bhagavan says, Ennai ariyen naan, Ennai arinden naan, Ennal nagaipu kidana. It is subject to ridicule. And the solution for that in the Ulladunarpada verse is the summum bonum. Bhagavan asks, are there two selves? Are there two selves for one to know the other or one to not know the other? Are there? தன்னை அறிதற்கும் அறிவித்தற்கும் அந்நியம் என்றால் அவிர்வது. The Atma doesn't have another. That is self-luminous, self-existent. Therefore, it doesn't have the other to know or to be ignorant of. So, the very duality of knowing and ignorance, they are eliminated in self-attention. Self-attention is self-luminous. That light of attention also merges in the self. Therefore, there are no two selves, the knowing self and the not knowing self. Therefore, even knowing oneself is ignorance, as it not knowing oneself. Is this not so? Tell me. So, when we say that I am a good person, I was like this, I have become a better person, we have to inquire there. Who feels that this change is there? That is a relative change, measurable by thought. For instance, when we look back in our journey, in our sadhana, if I used to tell, I used to be like this, then with the association of so and so, I became like this. Now, that should be inquired into. For whom is this thought that I was like this and I became like this? That is all the movements, all the changes in the ego are erased while going to the self-attention. In self-attention, the self-attention alone is real. Not that we are not grateful to the people who have helped. We are not grateful to the mother, and it's not like that. When in self-attention, one clearly understands the truth of all those people who have helped and who have not helped. The not helped people have also helped, because behind them also it is the same Shakti which has made them not help. And by that it has shaped us. The same power has remained behind those who help and those who have not helped. Therefore, now we are not to differentiate between them. We should ask, for whom is this thought that I was like this and I have changed now like this? And the self-attention alone is there. There is no path. There is no ignorant self becoming a self-luminous self. One understands that always, within inverted commas, because always also will be removed, always the self alone is real. Whatever we have identified with earlier, whatever changes we have identified, all get washed clean. Like when a rain comes and the downpour washes the road clean, absolutely nothing is left. That I was like this, I became like this, then I came to self-inquiry. All that is washed off in self-attention. because the self alone is real. The self attention alone is real. That is where Bhagavan takes us in Atma Vichara. All the earlier stories of the ego, the movements, the changes from ignorance to knowledge are also observed in the self. The statement of Sri Krishna that he alone is there in the beginning, middle, and end is realized by abiding in the self. Let us practice Atma Vicharam for the next 10 minutes. Revatima, you can set us the time.
Yes, uncle, I'll set the time.
Namaste. Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang by taking the second verse selected for us, verse number 782. 782, we find it still in meditation on the truth, focusing intently on the source. Focusing intently on the source to investigate what is our birthplace and to merge in that birthplace is of all methods the best for rooting out the suffering that exists only in the place where we have entered. To investigate what is our birthplace and to merge in that birthplace is of all methods the best for rooting out the suffering that exists only in the place we have entered. Muruganar, the miseries of birth appear only in the place that one has entered, that is, the mind that manifests as the body and the world. They do not arise in the place of one's birth, the heart. Therefore, by inquiring through self-ward attention, what is the place of my birth? A person should reach and abide in his source, the heart. Out of all the techniques that are suitable for destroying the miseries of birth, this is the best. Just as a woman, there is a quote from Ramana Paravidyopanishad, just as a woman suffering intolerably in her father-in-law's house obtains peace in her mother's house, so the mind, harried by samsaric suffering, wins peace by returning to its source. This is the sadhana, this is the best method or direct path that Bhagavan has given us. Whenever someone would ask, where am I going? It could be in relation to a particular situation. It could be in relation to a particular problem. Somebody has lost something. Sometimes it could be even the next birth. What will happen when we die? What are we going to become? And many say that inquiry into death is one of the highest meditations. In Buddhism, there is a separate method of meditating on death itself. But Bhagavan doesn't allow the ego to go there. Whenever someone would ask any such question, what is the ego going to become the next moment, in a few moments from now, in a few days, or after death, Bhagavan would always say, see if you are born now. See if you are born now is Bhagavan's reply. The understanding is that only after the ego arises, all the objective suffering arises. And when we take it as suffering, the best way to understand is that once the source is bliss, everything else is suffering. Any reduction from that source by being born into something else is definitely going to be suffering, because the source is the limitless bliss. To be born outside of that is suffering. That's why Bhagavan says, see from where you are born. It is, of course, knowledge to all of us that in Buddhism, the first noble truth is that birth is suffering, growth is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. It is suffering to be separated from that which you love. It is suffering to be joined with that which you hate. The master of the first noble truth is said to be the enlightened master. If one digests the first noble truth, then everything becomes suffering. Buddha says everything becomes suffering because birth is suffering, growth is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. And when the mind becomes full of suffering, when everything is suffering, then everything becomes bliss, says Buddha. The beauty of that is that when we find the truth of everything to be one, then that becomes bliss because the mind becomes still. There is nowhere for the mind to go. When everything is decided as suffering, then the mind, the ego becomes still. And Bhagavan gives that as the direct upadesham. Still the ego and take it to its source. That is the way to be free of suffering. Suffering is an illusion. Suffering doesn't exist. Maya is that which is not. Suffering is that which is not in Bhagavan. So, who is suffering when we ask? And when we dismantle the ego and abide in the heart, then everything is full of bliss. There is only bliss, only the unborn self. There is no bondage, therefore there is no liberation. There is no birth, therefore there is no death or fear of death. There is only the Atman, the self-luminous self. The path to discover that is self-attention. Whatever may be there, whatever may be the circumstance, are you not there? Asks Bhagavan. Without you, can the circumstance exist? Good or bad, can it exist? It cannot. Therefore, turn the attention inward, away from the circumstance, turn it inward and put the attention on the birthplace, the place from where the I thought arises. The beauty of the teaching is that is the very place from which everything arises. All the deities, all the Aishwarya, all that which we value as beauty, all that which we call intelligence in the relative area, all of them arise only from the same birthplace from where the I arises. The entire worlds arise from the place where the I arises. The place where the I arises, the birthplace is Purna. Everything else is limited. That is why everything else is considered to be suffering. Drop the suffering completely. Step outside of it by inquiring for whom is this thought. The simple practice. Stick to the process. Don't worry about results. Because it is the best method that Bhagavan has given us. Understand that validation is given by the great devotee Muruganar Swamigal with Bhagavan's blessings. That this is the best method, this is the direct method that any jiva can get. There cannot be more incredibly lucky people than those who come across and practice Atma Uchara. Because the whole area of suffering is seen as non-existent, and one goes and abides in one's own birthplace, the Atman, the Hridayam. For the next 10 minutes, let us practice getting back to that fullness of bliss, the complete absence of misery in the Atma Swarupa by practicing self-inquiry. Nandakumar, may we request you to help us out again? Namo Ramana. I request Venkatesh ji to give us the summing up remarks. Namo Ramana, sir.
Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwara, Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma, Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Dhanamulam Gurur Murti, Pujamulam Gurur Padam. Mantramulam Gururvakyam Mokshamulam Guru Kripa. Namo Ramana. So in Bhagavan's teaching, we do who am I? It's a very interesting thing. So one day I called my sister's house, my younger sister's house, and his son picked up the phone. And I said, hello. Then her son called my sister, and my sister asked one simple question: who's calling? So my sister's son said, someone who does not know himself. He said that person is calling someone who does not know himself. Now, if you go on asking, who am I, who am I, who am I, and walking around the road, somebody will think you're really mad. Because something which is absolutely closest to you, you're saying, I do not know myself. I do not know who am I. So this thing about two selves actually does not exist. Look at life. Now when we see, let's look at Guru itself. Now when I was just chanting the Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, a point occurred to me. Let's look at Guru. When we say Guru, what do we see Guru? We see Guru as separate from us. We see Ramana in the pictures, we see in Samadhi, we see in the books, we see, in Satsang, we see Ramana here, there, everywhere. So, but who is Ramana? So, if you really see, if you are trying to say Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, then my Guru Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. Now, what is Shivoham Shivoham? It is that your Swarupa. It is actually who you really are. So when we say Guru, Guru is not somebody who's outside. If we keep on saying, I follow that Guru, I follow that Guru, that it is really only to understand what he's teaching, what he's trying to tell us, what was his way of life. So his way of life will be a guidance for us. But finally, who's Guru? Guru is your Atman. This is a very important thing. But look at our lives, how it has been. We've always been covering ourselves. We look at our physical body, we cover it up. And, we have our mental bodies also. We have our intellect, we defend the intellect. We have our mind, we say, I am superior, this, that. So many coverings are there. And if you tell one lie, for example, you tell somebody one lie, next time you meet that person, oh, what did I tell him last time? So I should remember it this time. So one more covering. So this constant covering and covering and covering that is happening, covering your own mistakes, covering your own personality, covering your own mind, covering. Finally, what is happening? We are covering the self. We are covering our reality, and then we believe that the unreal is real. That's the problem. Is like the rope and the snake. What happens to the rope? The rope is actually real. What do you think? We believe that the snake is real. For us, at that moment of time, all those few minutes, when we are walking in the dark with dim light, we think, we believe at that point of time that That's a snake. It's not a rope. So what is the reality? The reality is the rope. So that's what now we are paying attention on the wrong thing. So this is a very important thing in our sadhana that all of us have to understand. We have to pay attention to the right thing. So what is the experience? If I ask each one of us, hey, who are you? You know who you are? Yes, I know, I am. I am. Yes, I am. Are you there now? Yes, I am. You will say, there's no doubt. Never, even a fraction of a second, there's never a doubt that you are. You exist. But the problem is, I am is okay. That you exist. You are that self. But the problem comes at the moment I suffix something to this. When I say I am Venkatesh, I am a Hindu, I am a Kannadika, I am an Indian, I am this so and so, so and so, so and so. I add all the suffixes to this I amness. I amness is perfectly fine. You know you exist perfectly fine. But the moment you add these suffixes, then what happens? You see somebody else with different suffixes. Everybody has the same prefix of I amness. But then somebody says, I am Sumati, somebody will say I am Vaibhav, somebody will say I am Karthik, somebody will say I am Vidya. Oh, there's somebody else different. Who is different from me? That suffix will make somebody's look a little different. Then what happens? Then dukkha starts. Oh, I am, I think so, a higher caste. I am a Kannadika, and that person may be a Tamilian, and this is not right with that fellow. This is not okay. I have got everything right in me. Other person is wrong. All the miseries of world starts, and that's what Bhagavan is saying. That all problems start because of this. So the important thing is, as I amness, that is the birthplace, everything is fine. As the ocean, as the water, everything is fine. The waves, see, when you go to the Indian Ocean and stand by the Indian Ocean, when the waves come up, do we call the waves, oh, this is not Indian Ocean? No, we never say. Even if it's a huge wave or even a tsunami, everything that comes, we put a label. But the wave, we do not call it different. Why? Because it is only the Indian Ocean. It is nothing else but the water. So why do we call each one of us, which is this unmanifest consciousness, which is manifest as each one of us, why do we, that I amness, which is the only reality, why do we leave that and move around in this world of names and forms? It's all because of the mind. So we are actually we are living a false life. See, when we say that any question that you get, when you ask a question, what does it mean? There is something out there which is real. So we have to understand this very clearly in our sadhana. That's why they say you must go to the silence. When you go to the silence, there is no question. In deep sleep, do you have any questions? No, you don't have any questions. Because the mind is shut, the world is shut, everything is perfect. But when you wake up, then the world wakes up and all these differences come up and you have questions. Oh, how do I realize myself? Bhagavan is saying, you are already that. Tattvamasi. You are already that. So what do you want to become? If you are already that, you will all be the ocean, then why do you worry about the waves that are coming up and going down? Are they apart from you? No, they're not apart from you. So the important thing really is, in our whole sadhana, we have to go with the truth. Once we go with the truth, which is the self, then what happens? You stop going into this, oh, in this situation, like the daughter-in-law situation, father-in-law's house unhappy, mother's house happy. What is different? The same person. The same person is in two places is different. Now, why does the misery come? Because of the mind. Because he or she thinks he is in a different place. That's why I am going to be acting a certain way. And if I'm in somebody with my mother, I'm going to act in a certain way. So these standards and these processes that we have in our mind cause all the dukkha, the misery. So if you really see misery, what it mean by misery? Something that you do not desire is a misery. Now, if you don't desire something, it's a misery. But what is desire itself? Desire itself is misery. I'll repeat that. Misery is something that you do not desire. But desire itself is misery. So, if you're leaving the self, which is the Atma Swarupa, and trying to think, oh, there's something out there which is better than better than I amness, because why? We have actually not gone inside this body. It's like if you see your body itself, unless it gives some trouble, then only if some knee pain happens or back pain happens, then you put some ointment or something like that. Otherwise, you don't go inside at all. You don't worry about the body at all. You keep on adding covering. Every day have bath, put new clothes on, fresh clothes, and try to look good. But finally, what is important is this is all false. These are all coverings. The coverings is that's what's called a veiling power. So the mind has a veiling power. It has covers up the reality, who we really are. So the more and more we do self-inquiry, then we start being in the real, being with yourself. So when you go and pay thousands and thousands of rupees to go for a management course or vipassana, whatever it is, they'll say, next 1 week, you are going to keep quiet, not talk to anybody, don't see anybody, sit quietly, be yourself. That's all. Be yourself. 10 days. And all this thing will become all be fine. You will all be with yourself and you say, oh, I paid 50,000 rupees. I'm feeling so nice that I've learned something new. You're not learned anything new. You're always there, and they just showed you the pointer. Instead of going outwards, go inwards and be with yourself. So the trick of all sadhana is be inside, be with Bhagavan, and be ever happy. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you.
Namo Ramana, sir. Thank you. Namo Ramana Vaibhavji and Prarthnama. Can we start the chanting?
Yes, sir.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana. भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चे सुखवारिराशे यस्योर्मिमात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन महोंशेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्ड संविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्हितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीय सुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीन मानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रधिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसंरम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्दृशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ पुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितः श्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः। ॐ चूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः। ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः। ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः। ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः। ॐ त्रिगुणाधिगाय नमः। ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः। ॐ विराजतचलाकृतये नमः। ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः। ॐ पूर्णाय नमः। ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः। ॐ गम्भीराय नमः। ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः। ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः। ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः। ॐ धीराय नमः। ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः। ॐ स्वराजे नमः। ॐ महर्षये नमः। ॐ भगवते नमः। ॐ ईड्याय नमः। ॐ भूमविद्याविशारदाय नमः। ॐ विमलाय नमः। ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः। ॐ आप्ताय नमः। ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः। ॐ समदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः। ॐ सत्याय नमः। ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः। ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः। ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः। ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः। ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः। ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः। ॐ श्रीशोणाचलहृद्बोधस्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः। ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः। ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्दपरिवृताय नमः। ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः। ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः। ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः। ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः। ॐ सौम्याय नमः। ॐ आत्मवते नमः। ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः। ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः। ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः। ॐ महाभागाय नमः। ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः। ॐ विनताय नमः। ॐ विनुताय नमः। ॐ विप्राय नमः। ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः। ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः। ॐ दर्शनादगसंहारिणे नमः। ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः। ॐ ऋच्चान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः। ॐ स्मरणाद्बन्धमोचकाय नमः। ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः। ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः। ॐ शोणादृशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः। ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः। ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः। ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः। ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः। ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः। ॐ गुहाय नमः। ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः। ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः। ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः। ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः। ॐ देवतमाय नमः। ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः। ॐ सेनान्ये नमः। ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः। ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थानोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्याजनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः निर्दिष्टस्वरवीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनाशेखरात् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। ॐ नमो भगवते श्री रमणाय
नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शन सुख मंगल मुख सकल जीवहित सम्मुख ब्रह्म संज्ञे सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानंद पुष्ट परम महर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೇ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ ಪ್ರಭಾವರಣ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ ನಮೋ ಮಹರ್ಷಿ बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय
ನಮೋ ರಮಣ ಅಕ್ಕ, ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.